Hello, everybody. Welcome to MedWell Unscripted. I'm April Woodcock with MedWell Health and Wellness Centers, and I am so excited for today. We have such a great topic. It's definitely something that is a popular industry in terms of getting into for your career. So today we're going to be talking about creating a career in the cannabis industry. And we have some special guests here. We have Emily Waxman, our Director of Community Outreach, and we have Seth Yaffe, who is a business cannabis expert. How are you guys today?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, good. We're so excited to have you. All right. So I want to start off and kind of do a quick introduction. Emily, I'm going to have you introduce yourself as always and tell everybody what you're doing in the community and all the great partnerships you're working on.
All right. Thank you so much, April. So my name is Emily Waxman, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here over at MedWell Health and Wellness. And I just love going out into the area so that I can just tell everyone how fantastic MedWell is, why you would want to get your medical card, especially from MedWell. And I get to meet amazing people like Seth Yaffe here today. And it's just an absolute pleasure to have you here, Seth. So thank you so very much again for joining us. We're so excited to have this show with you today.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right, Seth, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and conquering the world here in the cannabis industry?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I actually got into the cannabis industry in about 2015. So I've been in it for a little over 5 years now. I previous to that was a restaurant industry vet. I was the director of operations for a large restaurant group in the south end of Boston. I had been managing restaurants for about 15 years. Started using cannabis oils for some medical issues that I was having, and started finding out that it was doing a lot of great things for me. I was able to get off 3 different types of prescription medication for both insomnia and for migraines. So that was a really great personal experience that I had, and started talking to more people about it, and kind of started seeing it doing a lot of good for people. So I was able to make the transition out of restaurants and started off as the director of operations for Airmont, which is a medical facility in Quincy, which is vertically integrated. So kind of handled everything there post-harvest. So ran all of their production, oversaw their kitchen, their extraction lab, and set up their retail program there. And after I had worked for Airmont for about 1.5 years, it was sold. So instead of staying with the company that purchased it, I moved on and ran production for Revolutionary Clinics, which is one of the largest production facilities in the state out in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I had done that for about 1 year, and at the same time started a consulting company with my business partner, and we started consulting on cannabis businesses all over the country, as well as outside of the country. So we have about 15 clients all over the country and as far away as Macedonia. And then I had started working with a company out in Clinton, Massachusetts, which I'm now the COO of, and that's my only project. And it's called Society Cannabis Co. Right now, Society is in the process of going through our PPLI, so our post-provisional license inspection. We then will be going through our final and hopefully up and running in the next 3 to 4 months. We're opening up as adult use as we do our extraction lab, our retail, and then we will be adding on our cultivation, which will allow us to then follow through and be medical as well. So we'll be vertically integrated, meaning we'll be producing all of our own products and growing our own flower, selling our own stuff in retail, and then we'll be able to service both adult use and medical patients.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
What great experience. And so what states, so Macedonia, and then what other states were you working with in terms of consulting? That's because that's a lot of knowledge base of laws and different things that you need to learn.
Yeah. We've worked everywhere from California, Maine, Rhode Island, a lot of Eastern New Jersey as well too. So it's been a really great experience to kind of understand the ins and outs of cannabis in general, and regular cannabis business and products and retail and opportunities that are out there in the business world, but more importantly, which is, I think, a huge focus for a lot of people, is understanding the compliance, the regulations that are different from state to state. So that's obviously a large learning curve, and understanding compliance and regulations is, I would say, sometimes greater than 50% of what you need to do in terms of the tools to prepare yourself for the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I know it is.
Go ahead. Did you?
So, what's so interesting when you're talking, Seth, is, you really were able to get your foot in the door, starting with Ermon, and really from there just start learning all aspects of the industry. And it's interesting, before COVID, when I would be out and about at some of our trade shows, or just at a table set up in a dispensary, I would get asked, and I know you mentioned this too, that you get asked so much about getting your feet wet and being able to get into the industry. So many people want to get into the industry. I think it's painted as this really amazing, just very cool, fun place to be, which it is. But I think there's also, a whole nother side that people don't really realize. So what would be maybe just some advice that you would want to give to anyone that is thinking about, what would be a good step for them? I think a lot of people come from that similar industry, being in the restaurant business, or similar type of background. What would you say to them that would kind of help guide them into that direction?
Yeah, I think making the transition, I was, very fortunate at the time to be able to kind of make what's called a lateral move, basically go from a director of operations in one industry to a director of operations to another. I think, what I find is really interesting is that there's a lot of transferable skills between both the restaurant industry and the cannabis industry. So that's been, a very exciting thing to watch, is to kind of see a lot of people that have been able to make that transition, as well as, a lot of other, more obvious industries that are able to make transition, whether it's retail or whether it's production.
Yeah.
I think, as we discussed before and wanted to talk about this topic, I think that's usually the question that I'm asked the most and get reached out to pretty frequently. And I think, the main things that I always usually suggest to people is take a look at your resources. I find that Indeed is a great resource for information rather than just for posting. And the reason why I say that is because most people that have a desire to make a transition in the cannabis industry kind of have an idea of what they want to do, whether it's, I want to be a cultivator, I want to help grow, I want to run a retail, or I want to work in retail, or I want to work in production, or I have tons of chefs that reach out to me about potentially running an edible kitchen. And I think what's great about Indeed or other websites that promote different opportunities in the cannabis industry is using it for a resource to really figure out what are the roles and responsibilities of the jobs that you're looking for. So if you're looking to get in cultivation, reading the roles and responsibilities that companies post to give you a better idea what your day-to-day is going to be like, and what you're actually going to be doing is a really great start. Understanding the compensation structure as well too. There are a lot of people that believe that it's going to be an easy transferable job in terms of leaving as a chef of a restaurant kitchen and getting into an edible chef, and thinking that there's going to be similar pay structure. And one of the things that I always like to explain to people is that anytime that there's ever a career change, I always like to think about the education that's involved in it. So if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor, or you're going to be doing, real estate, anything else, is usually you have to go to, a secondary education center to figure out how you're going to learn and understand the industry and get some skills. So with cannabis, I wouldn't say that you necessarily need to go to a cannabis college or take a class. Those things can be very helpful, and they look really great on the resume. But what I usually say is, sometimes on-the-job training is a fantastic aspect of it. So if you're taking a pay decrease, or you're not going to be compensated on the same level as you are leaving one career to get into another, I take it as, you're almost getting paid to learn that job and get that experience. while you work for someone else. One of the things that I have seen, which is fantastic, is that, going back even 4 years, most of the people that started with me over at Airmont that were in, hourly positions and probably way less than they were making in their previous jobs to get into the industry are, there's 10 people that have worked for me and with me to open up Airmont as, the fourth medical dispensary that was in the state, that are now industry leaders in terms of management positions and directors. Awesome. So to see people come in at, an hourly rate, and now they're making, really great salaries, but more importantly, they're peers and they're managers and directors of operations for facilities. So sometimes understanding that, you might need to take a little bit of a pay cut, or a different salary structure to come into the industry, but there are opportunities that you can advance very quickly. And if you put some time and effort in and show people that you're dedicated and it's something that you really want to do.
So let me ask you this. So you talked about kind of your transition from the restaurant industry into cannabis. What about, and you mentioned certifications in cannabis college. What about entry level? So how hard is it, when you look on Indeed and on these job sites, they do a great job of the job description and what they're looking for. But how does somebody that's just starting out, entry level, that doesn't have a lot of experience, but really has a passion for cannabis and how it helps people, what would you offer some advice of getting in that way? Because sometimes it's all about who too. Networking.
Absolutely. I think, some of the things that I usually talk to people about that are looking to get into the industry is really understanding that, for a lack of a better way of looking at it, it's a very immature industry in Massachusetts in terms of how long it's been legal and how much experience anyone in Massachusetts can really have. So what I usually say is, there's very few people that are coming into the cannabis industry that have quote unquote 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, 4 years, 2 years. So it's not an industry that always really is looking for someone that's the most experienced in the industry. What I would say is that, what I look for in candidates, more than anything else, is attitude. Are you excited to learn? Have you been doing some homework pre-interview or pre-coming over? Do you understand kind of what are, the roles and responsibilities? And that's why I think that, Indeed or sites like that are great, because if you fully understand the job that you are applying for before you walk in, taking those notes and figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses in those roles and responsibilities, what are transferable skills that you're bringing over from another industry that you can explain to a potential employer. And what are things that you're excited to learn that you don't have experience doing? I think that what is very unique about this industry is that a lot of people, I guess you'd say, practice what they are excited about, or it's their hobby, or they're doing it at home. So, for instance,
it's an interesting analogy there.
So, they potentially have a home grow, or I meet people that it's a passion of theirs to make edibles. And I think what is really great about those things is it gives you experience and you're really understanding, the plant a little bit more and understanding some of the philosophies about why people do things. But just kind of leaning back on those experiences at home is very different than what you're probably going to be doing at work in a dispensary. So growing, fantastic flower at home is great, and it's something you should be really proud of, and if that's your hobby and it's really exciting, and that's great, but understanding that doing that at home is very different than going and doing it in a large scale production facility for cultivation. Making edibles at home is fantastic, and it's a great hobby and it's a lot of fun, but understanding that you're going to be using probably way different ingredients in much larger scale production when you get into a cannabis kitchen. So starting off with those things is great, but understanding that, just because you're doing something at home doesn't necessarily translate, but don't take that as a negative way. It's something that's really exciting to share with a potential employer, because it shows your interest. It shows that you're, this is something that you're passionate about. I always feel like if you come in every day with a great attitude and a passion, then anything else is trainable. And I think that
it's so true.
If you bring that to your interview, or you find a company that you really believe is lines up with your morals and what you want out of a company to work for, and that you want to put into it, and you feel like it's a great opportunity for you, is really coming in a humble attitude and explaining where and why you're interested in what you're kind of working on, but not being upset or frustrated if it looks like you don't have a lot of the skill sets all ready to go into the position, because as we talked about, most of this in the industry is entry level.
Sure. And so when you talked about like cannabis college and certifications, I know Massachusetts, like the community college, some of them are now offering certificates and certifications, not formal degrees. So would an entry level person, would that be a recommendation for you? Or you're just thinking really it's kind of on that perseverance, kind of entrepreneurial spirit, like get in and dig your heels in?
Yeah, I mean, for a lack of other experiences in other industries to kind of talk about the similarities and what I see in terms of parallels, it's kind of the same idea of when I was running kitchens, is hiring someone that had gone to culinary school or didn't go to culinary school.
Right.
It was never a prerequisite for me or most of the other chefs that I was peers with, or in the other restaurants that I had friends that were owning or running, to ever have a degree from a culinary school or go. Does it show that this is it's an interest of yours and a passion of yours? Absolutely. Is any education a fantastic starting ground for what you can bring to the table? Yes. But having said that, I don't think that most people right now are looking specifically for people that have those degrees or the certificates. At the same time, I don't think that any of those degrees that you can get or certificates are a negative thing or a waste. I think it's really based on your interest level and what you want to learn. I would say that the biggest, skill set or understanding that you can get from a secondary education source besides your own research would really be understanding the regulations for the state. It's one of those eye-opening things. I think in this industry, it's very different than most other industries, is that you could have worked for 10 years in Colorado and come to Massachusetts, and every skill that you've gained there could very well not translate very well to what you're doing here, whether it's working in an extraction lab, working in a retail dispensary, because our regulations are far different in Massachusetts than any other state. So when people already understand the regulations and have a good grasp for it in terms of what that means for their job or their roles and responsibilities, for what their career is going to be, that is something that obviously gives them a slight leg up, I think, when you're looking for a job in the industry.
And Seth, maybe you can just mention too that the marijuana industry is the same as any other industry. When a candidate comes to you for a potential job opportunity, I would imagine, still want them to look professional and not like they just stepped out of a car smelling like anything. It would still be the utmost professional person that you would still want to come in your door, whether they had a ton of experience or an entry-level candidate. I would think it would still be the same sort of expectation.
I have generally looked pretty informal, I would say, for a lot of the positions I've had, luckily being in the restaurant industry for as long as I have, being covered in tattoos and showing up to work, jeans and a t-shirt at the beginning of the day and changing.
Well, that's okay, but
exactly.
and I think at some level you have to
be,
you have to be your own personality, right? Because
absolutely.
if you're but I agree with you, you got to clean up a little bit.
Absolutely, but I would say that, for me, being informal or more informal than some other industries that you're in, still, can still look professional.
Absolutely.
And what I would say is that, when someone comes in to meet me, especially for the first time for an interview, or is stopping by the dispensary that I've worked in, or my production facility, and shown interest in a job, it is pretty important to me that this person looks like they're taking the potential job seriously. And, my biggest philosophy that I try to instill into everyone is that, my expectation is that everyone comes to work ready to work every day.
Yeah.
And so if you are coming to work and you look like you are distracted or impaired or not ready to be a team member, then you're not putting your best foot forward in order to help everyone else that's on your team.
Right.
I don't believe that any industry that I've been involved in, especially the cannabis industry, relies on one person. You can have the best cultivator in the world, but if you don't have a great support system and support team for them, it's not really going to get very far. Same thing with retail, same thing with production. So, my philosophy is that, I try to come to work every day as prepared as I possibly can, as, leaving, any outside stuff at the door. I come in with a great attitude. I try to work and figure out where I can support other people. And those are the same expectations I have for other people that come in and work on my team. So if you're showing up already looking like you're not really ready to work in an interview, then it kind of shows me a lot of what you're potentially going to be showing up down the line. And, I think it can be a very fun industry. It's new. There's a lot of exciting things. There's, some fantastic aspects of the culture that we're able to kind of change and start, since it's such a young industry. But I think one of the biggest things that I always say is, let's show people how professional we can be in this industry. And I'm always love when people are surprised, at what I do or what some of my colleagues do if they have a negative idea or a negative viewpoint of cannabis in general. And showing them that, for anything else, it is a business. It is, when you're looking at adult use, or it is a medical facility. And those are things that should be taken very seriously when you're dealing with patients. That's a very important responsibility that you have, whether you're growing and producing medicine or whether you're also talking and communicating to your patients, especially a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience using cannabis and have some pretty serious medical issues. And if you're not ready to work and you're not, on point and you're not taking it seriously in the interview, then it's showing me what you could be doing potentially to people that are way more important than I am, which is, our patients and our customers that are coming in.
Right. Absolutely. Great advice.
How competitive is it to get a job, do you think? I mean, I know like you gave a perfect example, people coming in not necessarily being as serious as they should, because it sounds like a fun place to be, right? So I'm sure you get a lot of the wrong applicants and you get a lot of the right applicants, but how competitive is it?
I think it's revolving. I would say that more often than not, what I usually take a look at is what is the growth cycle of the industry that we're in. The great thing about restaurants, I always believed, is that there's restaurants all over the world. It's one of the oldest professions, the entire world working in restaurants. So getting, a job at one restaurant versus another can sometimes be kind of easy. But what I always look at is what's the restaurant that I wanted to work at? What restaurant said, what did it say about me if I worked at that restaurant? What was the philosophy that they had? What was the reputation of that restaurant? Who were they serving? And what were the perks of being at that restaurant and part of that restaurant family? And I think it's very similar in cannabis. I think that it's a very fast growing industry. More states are picking it up. There's going to be consistently more opportunities. But what I do find is that the companies that are doing very well in terms of the culture that they have with their employees, how they treat their employees, how they treat their customers, how much effort they put in trying to provide the best products that they possibly can. And those are the ones that tend to be a little bit harder to get into sometimes because there's more people that want to work there.
Sure. And they have employee retention probably too, right? No one wants to leave once you're there.
Yeah. But I would say that more than anything, what's great about looking to change careers into cannabis is, the two things of it's a very fast growing industry. So there's consistently going to be more jobs and more companies that are coming up. And especially with the micro licenses, I see a lot of really exciting companies that are coming up that are going to be really small, very boutique driven, very sustainably run, that are really exciting to me. And those are some really great companies to work for. And, for me, what I try to talk to people about is, any career change that you're doing, you're looking to get into something that's brand new to you. And you're starting to learn a little bit more about the company that you're working for, as well as the other companies that are coming up around you. So the opportunity to get into the industry and then, get some experience, understanding how things run, and then, potentially keep your eye out for other opportunities is the best way to go about it, I think. You know, I would say that there are going to be continuously more and more opportunities out there in general, which also means that there's going to be better and better companies to potentially work for and build your way up. And to see people go from, you know, an entry-level position and then a year later be in, you know, a high-level management position shows that there's a tremendous amount of growth in this industry that you can do. So not to get discouraged at the very beginning of your pathway into cannabis is one of the biggest things that I try to, you know, explain to people, and that I really try to support people is not to worry too much if, you know, all the opportunities out there are very entry level, because you have to start somewhere. But, you know, you can rise up pretty quickly as long as you know, learn as much as you can and try to be the best employee you can and keep pushing.
Seth, you can probably attest to this too, and you touched upon it before when you were just talking, but I'm sure you can make mention and affirm that, you know, the culture at Ermont is probably very different than the culture at Rev Clinics. So when someone is even thinking about, you know, applying for a certain position, you know, it's one thing for the applicant to consider what might be the best environment for them as well. You know, you know, dispensaries all have their own, each time I walk into one, they all have their own different sort of vibe going on, their own sort of culture. So I think it's important too that, you know, even though someone really wants to get into the industry, they also want to make sure that they're checking out something that would be a good fit for them as well, I would imagine, you know.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I used to always talk to people about in restaurants is, you know, before you apply someplace, you know, go in and have dinner there. Go sit at the bar and have a drink. Talk to your bartender, talk to your server.
So true.
Just kind of be a fly on the wall. See people seem really happy that are working there. Do they seem supported? Are they knowledgeable? People generally don't stay places too long if they're not treated well, or if they're not really working in a great culture. So understanding turnover, how long have some of the people been working there? You know, and you know, especially in this industry, what I find is that people are very excited. And people like to talk a lot about what they do. And if you go into a dispensary and you start, you know, and you're thinking about applying there, even if you don't know anyone that works for that company, kind of getting a good feel for it when you walk in the door. And understanding, you know, what is available. You know, some people are going to have to make decisions on where they work based on the location and how easy it is to commute. You know, we were chatting very briefly before this conversation about
a pretty big one.
You know, when I was working at Ermont and I was living in Boston, it was a 15-minute commute for me. And since leaving Ermont, both my commutes have been an hour plus.
But you love what you do, so it makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things is that understanding that as this is a very young industry, and the licensing process in Massachusetts is a very long one to get open, and relies a lot on your relationship with the town that you're opening up in, and the town's or city's feeling about continuing to open up cannabis facilities. It might be a little bit longer of a commute to go to some of the places that you really want to work at. So that's something to kind of think about as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So we were talking a little bit about stigmas earlier, but so in a registered medical dispensary, I just want to clarify for people, because I think sometimes people think it's fun and games behind the door. Yes, there's culture, but they're not smoking joints all day. Can you kind of give us an insight on the back end of what's happening inside the dispensaries, like what the systems are, and kind of that'd be helpful.
You know, one of the things that I always think is really interesting is that through building a couple of these facilities and working with a lot of construction and design elements of these dispensaries as they're getting built, or production facilities, is that, you know, the alarm companies that I work with always get a big chuckle out of it. I've been working with a couple of great alarm companies, and they always laugh that there's more cameras in a dispensary or a production facility in cannabis than there are in casinos. So where you have an idea when you walk into a casino or you see the movies and everything, and there's every square inch, it's almost, you know, 1.5 times that in any side of a cannabis facility. especially in Massachusetts. So the idea that, everyone's just kind of sitting around smoking joints while, they grow things or they're packaging or doing whatever, or, is not true. It's very, very similar to a lot of other production or retail facilities, except for there's a lot more oversight. There's a lot more regulations on what you're doing, how you're doing it, how things are being logged. Everything is tracked very, very fluidly through what we have in Massachusetts, which is called seed to sale, which means that from the seed that you bring into your facility, if you're starting with seeds at the very beginning, all the way through when any product walks out the door, everything is tracked by barcode for, even the 10th of a gram of any product that you're producing. So the idea that there's, a product sitting around that can either be, snuck out the back door or consumed on site, and there's absolutely no consumption on site as well too. And if there was a consumption on site, it's very easy to be shut down for those types of things.
Right.
So it is very funny, because I think the more that you've worked in a production facility in cannabis, the more sensitized that you get to being surrounded by cannabis on a daily basis.
Sure.
And when you bring someone in for their first tour, I always call it like the Willy Wonka syndrome, where it's like you walk in and these guys are huge and it's a smile and oh my God.
I would agree. I had the opportunity to visit a dispensary, and I was just like, I think my mouth was like, this is totally not what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I don't love walking around a cultivation, halfway through the day and taking a deep breath and watching all the plants grow. And I think what's great about the industry is, the amount of education that you get on a daily basis from people is fantastic.
That's awesome.
So true.
I have a hard time keeping a house plant alive, so cultivation is really my strong point. But working with some amazing cultivators at both those projects and in many other projects that I've worked at, it's unbelievable what you can learn for large scale or even small scale professional cultivations or extraction labs or edible kitchens. It's unbelievable the amount of knowledge that you can get, and it is consistently these facilities and the retail dispensaries are places that people take very seriously. There's a lot on the line. It's very expensive to get these things up and running. It's very it's very hard to do things the right way and to be compliant with all the regulations, more so than any other industry that I've ever been involved in and seen. So being impaired on the job is not generally something that is very easy to either quote unquote get away with or to be able to support, because there's a lot of different situations that can be very harmful to other people. And as we talked about, almost everyone that I've worked with, especially in the medical end, understands that at the end of the day, we're producing medicine. And you wouldn't, expect to walk into a pharmaceutical company and see people taking keg stands and all naked. That's kind of the way that
that would not be happening.
I've never been to one. I don't know. Maybe that does happen.
It could be. You never know. So, Seth, we do have a question. I just want to, when you're finished. Yeah. So our friend Frank on YouTube is asking, do you have any suggestions on positions to look for when applying for your first job in the industry? Great question.
Yeah, I think it really gets to, what you're looking to do. I think that's a huge thing. I will say that it is, as all these, as this industry is growing and also the availability of being able to cross-train in some of these situations. One of the things I try to describe to people, especially if you don't know what position you want to do, or you're thinking about a couple different positions that you might want to learn, I would suggest looking for a vertically integrated company versus a company that just does one thing. So the difference between those two is a vertically integrated company produces all of their own products or most of their own products and also sells. So you have a bunch of different sections of that cannabis company that you might be able to move around in, meaning that I've worked with a lot of people that started for me in retail because those were the open positions that we had. It wasn't their first, thing that they wanted to do. They really wanted to get into cultivation, but we didn't have any cultivation opportunities at that time. Right. So they got in, they started working really well in that position and showed that they were, a great candidate for other positions by taking the job very seriously, always trying to do better, always trying to help out. Slowly started learning about the cultivation roles and responsibilities in that company, and then were able to make a move into cultivation when something opened up. But if you know exactly what you want to do, you just want to be in cultivation or you just want to be retail, then you can start looking for some of those positions with those companies that are just doing those things. So if you were kind of coming in and just saying, I don't really care, or I just want to get in the industry, I don't really know where I want to be, for the future of it, or what I'm really going to be happy doing. And then, I would also try to figure out like what your end goal is. Are you looking to be a director of cultivation one day? Then you might have to work for a bunch of years as, on the cultivation team. And that might be something that you would have to see as like your career path to get to that place. But I also think that anyone that has any experience in cannabis in general is usually a really good candidate for another position in another company. My own personal experience, if I saw that you worked retail somewhere for a year and a half and then I'm hiring for cultivation, especially if it's a entry-level position for cultivation, I would definitely look at your resume very seriously, because I know that you have worked for another facility, you understand how to do things and follow regulations, and that you understand the regulations in the state. So that's a huge, a huge asset for you to walk into a different facility, even if it's in a different section and different, aspect of the cannabis industry.
Wow.
And it does seem like a lot of dispensaries do promote from within and move around. So it's definitely, like you said, the bigger the group, the more opportunity, I would imagine. So
yeah, I would say that some of the what I call like interviews that have gone wrong, so to speak, is when someone's come in and been like, oh, I'm applying for retail, but I hate retail. I actually don't want to do retail at all. But you don't have cultivation open, so I guess I'll do that for a while until something opens up. That's not, someone that I'm rip roaring and ready to sign up to work alongside a lot of people that are very passionate about retail and want to understand that and want to be able to rely on someone that's coming in every day and excited to work alongside them and learn a lot about it. But there is, especially because it's such a new industry and you're working within regulations that are consistently changing. For me, hiring from within or moving people into positions from within, that's always my first look. Is I have an opening here. Who's currently working for me? Has anyone showed interest? Has anyone asked to learn more about it? Great. And I think it's a really important thing. My philosophy has always been to try to set everyone up for success every day and to figure out what they want to do in their career path and always do my best to make sure that I can make that happen.
That's great.
What kind of hours are, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, no. What kind of hours are typically, so when you talk retail and like, what is, 7 days a week, what types of hours are usually offered within a dispensary?
Yeah, I think just like, any other business, things are different in different companies. Most operators that I see are open 7 days a week. Most are doing around 10-hour retail shifts. I know a lot of people that do 3 or 4 day weeks for the retail staff. I know people that do, a traditional 5 day and, you 2 shifts in your production facilities. I know a lot of people start off with 1 shift at the very beginning for production. And then cultivation, I see a lot of people that, start 1 shift and then add on a 2nd or a 3rd shift. My experience at Airmont was 1 shift and, for cultivation, during, just 1 long cultivation shift during the day for the cultivators. And then at Revolutionary Clinics, it was run as a 3 shift. It was actually, for a 24-hour cycle. So it really depends on the scale and what the cultivators' systems are set up. There aren't a ton of companies that hire mostly part-time because it is pretty expensive to bring on each employee. In Massachusetts, the regulations are that you have to do a full 7-year Corey background check on every applicant and everyone that works for your facility, as well as getting them a registered agent card that you provide to your employees as well too. So unlike a restaurant where I could just say, hey, resume looks great. Let's start tomorrow. What do you think?
Right.
In cannabis, we're waiting for your background check to come in that we're paying for. We're waiting for your agent card to come in that we're paying for. And so at the end of the day, a lot of companies are looking more for full-time people that are ready to commit.
Sure.
If the company is going to have to cover those costs to bring them on.
Right.
So your friend Ryan is here. Seth helped me to start my cannabis career at Airmont in 2016. He's a solid dude, very experienced, very respectable. I'm glad to see him constantly advancing in this industry. Thanks for your contributions to this discussion. So awesome. So you've touched many, Seth.
He is the best.
Yeah,
So,
no, I could not be luckier to have worked with the teams that I've worked with so far. I would say that, the interesting thing for me, as we talked about at the very beginning about, when we were discussing showing up, for an interview, ready to work and stuff like that is I've found in the cannabis industry more professional people than I ever did in the restaurant industry, percentage-wise. People that are really excited to work together, share. Ryan's a great example of that, of someone that's been transitioning around a lot in the cannabis industry in different sectors. And it's been a fantastic experience for me to work with so many fantastic people, and to see people grow in the industry has been great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what would, in the interest of time, because your time is valuable and we so appreciate you being here today. So what would be your kind of words of wisdom to someone came to you, said, what do I need to do to get in? I know you've covered a lot of ground here, but what would be your lasting words of wisdom to them?
Yeah, I would say, do a little bit of research, figure out exactly what you want to do. What is your passion? What are the reasons why you want to get into cannabis? I think that's, a really big thing. I think, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen a lot of people make in terms of getting into the cannabis industry is this idea that, you're going to be a millionaire in 3 years. I wish that was the case. But more importantly, to really try to figure out like what you want to get out of the restaurant industry.
Right.
The same way that I would say, you would want to do that for any industry that you're getting into. What are the things that excite you about it? And do your research, figure out, as we talked about, what are the roles and responsibilities of the jobs that you're looking to get into, and what are the skill sets needed. And if you don't have any of those skill sets, I would still say, if it's something that you're passionate about, there's zero reason not to go after your dream. And, I've hired, I would say when we started Airmont, there was one person that had any legal cannabis experience that we hired from day one. It was all people that were willing to learn as fast as they could, work as a team, have a great attitude, and do a bunch of homework and work really hard at building their knowledge base and sharing that knowledge base with other people. And, those are skill sets that anyone can have. But, I think to give yourself a little bit of an edge compared to other people that are just blindly walking in and saying, I just want to work in cannabis, really doing the research and figuring out, what job you're applying for, what jobs are out there, and, how your skill sets are going to transfer from other industries that you're coming over from.
Awesome. And so what's next for you, Seth? Tell us about where we can find you. What's on your agenda? You're a busy guy, so share with us.
So I could not be more excited about the project that I'm working on right now, Society Cannabis Co. In Clinton, Massachusetts. I wish I could say, come visit us soon. It's going to be a couple more months till we get there. But yeah, I'm working with some of the best people that I've worked with in cannabis so far. Have a lot of support. We're working with a lot of other great groups and great projects that, I've been lucky enough to work with the last couple of years. We have a tremendous amount of products that we're really excited to get out there into the market. And, more than anything, I love the hospitality aspect of this industry of really, treating every patient and every customer that comes in as if they're the most important person that walks into the building, and being able to supply them with a tremendous amount of education and knowledge, have them feel that they're supported, and give them the best products that we possibly can.
Well, I can't wait to go visit you up there when it's open. So we'll really be looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be a guest again when you open. You'll have to come visit us on our MedWell Unscripted. Awesome.
Yeah, and if you want to add us to Instagram, we're Society Cannabis Co. on Instagram, as well as our website is societycannabisco.com. And both those places will have updates of as we're going through the licensing process, and more updates about when you can come out and visit us.
Awesome.
And
thank you so much, Seth.
Thank you very much. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Thanks to Kayla in the chat. And thank you all for coming today to MedWell Unscripted. We're going to see you again in 2 weeks. We're going to be having some special guests from Revolutionaries Clinics, and we're going to be talking about the patient experience. So catch you in 2 weeks. Thanks again, Seth. Thanks, Emily. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, guys.